Let's transition to something important and something key here. Ja Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies. Ja Morant is a good player. Ja Morant is a really good, really impressive player for the Memphis Grizzlies. He was having a solid season. To me, I think he could have been more consistent, but it's impossible to talk about Ja Morant and his impact on the Grizzlies without speaking to his suspension. As we know, Ja Morant got into trouble initially because he was flashing a weapon on IG Live, and the league stepped in. They doled out their, rulings on that. Ja Morant did a press conference with Jalen Rose. They spoke to the things he could do better, and that was that. They go into the playoffs. This team was super depleted in the front court with Brandon Clark tearing his Achilles and Steven Adams also going out due to injury, but they fought a competitive series against that Lakers team with Dillon Brooks being Dillon Brooks, one of the most inefficient players in basketball, Ja Morant having a hand injury, and JJJ, to his credit, playing consistent defense to where he wasn't fouling out every single game, and Desmond Bane stepping up and being a really productive player. But then in the offseason, during the finals, Ja Morant is caught again on IG Live yet again. So the league steps in, and because of that, they suspend Ja Morant next season, 2024, for 25 games. Now let's talk about that real quick, right? 25 games for Ja Morant. Some people think it should be 30 or 40. Some people think it's too harsh. I am in the middle. Because for me coming in, I believe that Ja Morant was going to get the full extent of what the NBA wanted to demonstrate. And what people are not talking about is this suspension automatically takes Ja Morant out of all NBA considerations, of any award considerations for the next year. He might not even make the All-Star game based on the amount of games he's going to miss. So what I hope for Ja Morant is he acknowledges and he understands what is at stake for his career, how good of a basketball player he is, and how he directly impacts the Memphis Grizzlies. Because let's not get it twisted. Ja Morant is a special player. I really think he's going to be very good. He's already shown his rim pressure is one of the best in the NBA. The pressure he puts on a defense has been good. And even his playoff resiliency in bigger moments, we've seen him have high moments in the playoffs. But the truth that we have to speak to as well is, as good as Ja Morant is, he still has flaws in his game. He does. Like, he plays at 100% motor a lot. I think he can be crafty around the basket, sure, but he needs to find a way to be more complete in the half court. And with Memphis getting Marcus Smart, I think it does help in terms of having a defender and another guy who can space out there, but he's not Tyus Jones. He's just not. And Tyus Jones last year, by the numbers, was a better half-court player and contributed more to the offense than Ja Morant. Now, granted, there's a bunch of things you can argue with the play styles, the minutes, all this and all that, but the point is, there's going to be a lot more pressure on Ja this season, because after being suspended 25 games, whatever the Grizzlies are at, Ja Morant's goal is to come back, gel into that team, run that team, and help them have playoff success yet again. So to me, I'm looking at Ja, and I'm hoping that he can figure this out. I want to be clear. I see a lot of people defending Ja, and I'm just not on that. I like Ja Morant a lot, but at the end of the day, you got to call a spade a spade. When you're given an opportunity and you make a mistake, we all make mistakes. Everyone's human. Everyone makes mistakes. But when you do the same thing again in the span of 2 months, the same exact thing, the same exact situation, just in a different environment, you are not taking it seriously. You clearly were not thinking, and you just, did what you did. And because of that, you're losing out on millions and millions of dollars. And again, for these athletes, This is generational wealth. It really, really is. But for Ja, I really hope that he figures this out, because for the Grizzlies to have success, their vision is to build around Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, and JJJ. And Ja being the best he can be on the basketball court is so crucial to all of these things, because taking those 25 games away from the Grizzlies, while they've had some success without Ja Morant, remember, Tyus Jones was their guard, demonstrating that offense for a lot of the time when Ja was not on the floor. But in these 25 games, you're talking about a Western Conference that significantly got better. We're talking about a Western Conference that had multiple teams fighting to win 40 games, 45 games, 50 games. OKC got better. The Warriors bench, ironically enough, got better. Minnesota, they're going to get better. Houston added a lot of players. They're going to get better. The competition in the West every year is simply going to get better. So if you're Ja Morant, you got to understand how important you are, not just to your team, but to the NBA. Because a lot of people look up to Ja Morant and look at him to be like the face of what the NBA could be in the future and the face of the younger player movements. So by Ja Morant pretty much taking things for granted and getting into the same problems he faced before, it's just not taking it seriously. So 25 games, I think, is a great example to set of, hey, you will miss out on millions and millions of dollars and cost your team a lot of games if you're not playing. So I think it's fair. But again, I like Ja Morant. I just hope that he's able to really figure out his game, become a better half-court player, become a more consistent spacer, and please slow down, because the recklessness from Ja Morant on and off the court is dangerous. I feel like for Ja, if you're consistently going at people 100 miles an hour, you're always landing weird, this and that, you are putting yourself in risk and danger to potentially really hurt yourself and no longer be the same player that we're projecting you to be. And I think that Ja is a smart player. I just think he's fearless. And that fearless can be a double-edged sword. Fearlessness is what gives you the confidence to dominate, to conquer, to be a top 5, top 10, whatever caliber type of player, because you don't have the fear in you telling you, I can't do this, I can't do that. But at the same time, once you get to a higher level and you're playing better competition, you have to pivot away from fearlessness to an understanding, to a dissection of a defense, to understand, okay, to be more impactful and effective in these spots, I have to do X, Y, or Z better at a higher level. I can't just go this way because help side is here. And I think Ja Morant is 100% capable of doing this. Because again, in the Golden State series from 2 years ago, I literally saw Ja Morant figure that Warriors defense out. But then once they adjusted and made it harder for him before he got injured, Ja Morant was having way more problems. So for that Memphis team, for them to have long-term success, it's going to be very reliant on Ja figuring that out. But also, it's not just on Ja. The JJJ stuff is super crucial because as a 5, I think he has the size to be a great help side defender. Physically, every year, he's getting stronger. He's being very, very switchable. So having him unlocked at that position with spacing is great from Desmond Bane. But they also need a wing. This Memphis team doesn't have a consistent wing that can shot create and play defense on the other end. And they really need to solve that to be that final piece to the team, because this is a defensive-minded team. They just added a defensive player of the year in Smart, who is great and can play up, but ultimately he's not a wing. He's still a smaller guard. So those are my thoughts on Memphis. I do like their team. A lot of people, once again, are going to count them out and say they can't make the playoffs. Every year they have outperformed expectations. Even I have counted against them certain years and they've proven me wrong. So they have my respect. And I do like Memphis and what they're doing. I hope that they can shift the culture around from last season and change some stuff. So shout out to them. But now let's pivot to one of my favorite players in the league and one of the most interesting teams in the league. That's right, y'all. We are